How's it going, everyone? Welcome to my YouTube channel. Thanks for stopping by. My name is Aaron, but for now you can call me New Gloom. The background footage for this video is not going to be too important or relevant to what I'm about to talk about in this video. Just some like old Black Ops 3 custom zombies footage from about a year ago that I played with my friend Gabe. Shout out Gabe if you're watching. I just wanted to have something at least somewhat entertaining in the background to, just play while I talk, because I intend this video is probably going to be a little bit on the longer side. I have like a rough outline of what I want to talk about, and it's going to be a lot of stuff, so it's definitely going to be a longer video, a gap session, if you will. I just want to have something, that's not going to put you to sleep in the background while I talk here. But if you want to just, have this video open and just listen to what I'm saying, I mean, the background footage is not relevant, so do with that as you will. The reason I'm making this video, I'm going to explain that as I go, because obviously if you look at my channel, I haven't posted any videos in a long time, and I'm not really a YouTuber by any stretch of the imagination. I don't make videos regularly, but I decided to make this one, and I'll get into that in a little bit here. But what I want to start with to kind of preface why I'm making this video and where this is all leading up to, I want to first kind of give a little background, or a little bit, I guess, of my own lore, for lack of a better word, of my history on this platform on YouTube, how long I've been using it, and that kind of stuff, because it will play into why I'm making this video eventually when I kind of wrap everything together. So, like I said, again, it's probably gonna be a little bit longer one. So if you stick around and listen to the whole thing, I appreciate it, because I promise this will start to make sense as I keep going. I'm immediately going to show my age once I talk about this stuff here, but I still remember the very first YouTube channel that I ever made. It was, I remember it almost down to the exact date, actually. It was either September 15th or the 16th of 2007. The only reason I don't know the exact date is because that channel sadly got suspended only like a year after I made it. I think I got suspended because there was a lot of, back in the older YouTube days, there was still like copyright drama and shit going on, particularly with like companies like Viacom and shit. Anyone who's around on YouTube back then knows what I'm talking about. Pretty sure I uploaded like a old Naruto AMV or something that had Linkin Park as the song, and I think the song itself is probably what did me. And it was crazy that there wasn't even like a 3 strikes back then. I think I just got deleted right from that. If I look up the YouTube channel's URL on the Wayback Machine, it captured 2 snapshots from 2008, and the first one's from March and the second one's from June. The one from March just redirects to the account is suspended banner on the old YouTube page, so that will tell you about how long I had it. That first one, September 2007 to March 2008. I mean, could have been earlier. I don't know when exactly that channel got suspended, but I ended up making another channel, and I'll get into that. I do hopefully one day plan on making a video where like I kind of look into my old YouTube channels, because I've had a lot of them, and I still remember most of them. I think it'll be kind of just a cool nostalgia trip to go on, because I have a long history on YouTube that I'll probably get into with time. Speaking of that, does anyone else remember those AMV days on YouTube, by the way? Like the old anime AMV days where like every single one of these Dragon Ball Z or Naruto AMVs had like Linkin Park or like 3 Days Grace as the song. That was like the old like golden age of YouTube, in my opinion. Obviously, AMVs are kind of making a comeback a little bit, but back then it was like the coolest thing in the world when you were like a 12-year-old kid. Anyways, my younger siblings and I, we first started going on the internet when we were kids. And when we first started, we didn't actually know YouTube existed for at least the first couple months that we were on the internet. My earliest internet days were mostly on websites like newgrounds.com. If anyone remembers that platform, we were usually either watching like Flash animations or playing Flash games, stuff like that. So that was a majority of what I was spending my time doing when I first discovered the world of the internet. And I remember at some point we discovered the Numa Numa video. I'm sure everyone knows what that is as well. Old viral video if you don't. I would watch that a lot. That was like the first viral video I guess I ever saw as a kid. And if my memory serves correctly, I think one of the ways we ended up finding YouTube as a platform was we were trying to search for that Numa Numa video, and I think somehow we ended up stumbling upon it on there instead of Newgrounds, because it was on Newgrounds as well. I think we found like a re-upload of it on YouTube. I could be wrong, but I know we discovered that video around the same time that we found YouTube, but it's been a long time, so that could be wrong. Nonetheless, we found YouTube, and that pretty much changed, I think, all of our lives, especially mine. I was around 11 years old at the time that we discovered YouTube, and just being exposed to like a gold mine of art, content, all this, like these different influencers. I hate that word, but you know what I mean, like all these personalities on the internet. And this, it was just like a treasure trove of like thousands of hours of entertainment and knowledge. I still watch YouTube to this day, so that's been about 20 years almost of me watching YouTube and like finding new stuff to enjoy. I made my first YouTube account not long after that we found YouTube. That's the one I mentioned that got suspended. The original channel I made was called AT and JH, which was literally just my initials and then followed by my best friend at the time's initials. I know that's very creative, but yeah, that was our channel, AT and JH. When I started watching YouTube, the one genre of YouTube video that I quickly found and like got really into not long after I found YouTube was like the live action, I guess like skit based comedy kind of videos. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about, like Smosh and Fred, that kind of stuff, like those older YouTubers. Most people my age probably also watch the same people. Smosh was particular because that was the one that my friend and I really, really got into when we were kids. And AT and JH was essentially supposed to be like our own ripoff of Smosh, I guess, because, I mean, we never actually made any videos, for one. I mean, we did make a couple videos with some friends, but they were not skits by any means. They were not like scripted or written videos, like well-made videos at all. I'll probably get into those videos at some point in the future too, because I think it'll be fun to go back and watch those, because it would just be a fun, trip down memory lane. But we kind of wanted to do the same thing that Smosh was doing, like just funny, like live action comedy kind of shit with two friends, and that was us. But we were two preteen boys at this time. Like I was 11 and he was 12, my friend. Obviously we weren't going to be able to create like really good stuff at that age. I mean, like some people can do that. They have that spark pretty young and know what they're doing. But I mean, we were just two stupid kids from the South, and we were poor, and like not only did we not have any way to afford a video camera or anything that was going to help us make videos, and neither one of us were going to actually learn how to write or film a skit, anything like that. Not only did we have no way to afford a video camera or anything to actually help us make videos, we sure as hell were not going to learn how to actually write or film a skit or anything like that. I mean, we were 12 years old, we were kids, like I mentioned, and at that age, all that really mattered were like fucking video games and television, fucking, shit going on at school, and, the very weird and confusing chaos that is male puberty. And like that AMV I mentioned that got our account suspended, I didn't even make that. Like there was somebody who like would make AMVs for people, and then they would let you basically just post them, and it was like he just made one for free and I posted on my channel. I mean, I was not capable of actually making an AMV. I didn't know how to do it. Like I was not going to be able to figure that out at my stupid young age. We would occasionally throw around a few like joke ideas for our skits, and like we threw out a couple ideas for things we could do in videos, but it's kind of exactly what you'd probably expect of two immature kids, especially fucking, young boys. It was a lot of just like toilet humor, sex jokes, like fart jokes, like really stupid shit like that. I still remember some of them, but I'm just gonna keep those to myself because it'd be very cringe for me to repeat any of that stuff. Definitely they're not funny by any means, so I'll just kind of keep that to myself. But as I mentioned, that channel got suspended at some point, and then I must have went through at least 5, 6, 7 more channels as the years went on. I would pretty much make a new YouTube account every single time I wanted to go by a new username, as back then you couldn't change it on YouTube. If it wasn't because of that, it was because I usually would find some new interest to hyperfixate on for the next like 4 or 5 months, and then I would suddenly want to make a YouTube channel based around that hobby and only that hobby. So like every time I got into something new, I would restructure and restart a YouTube channel with a new name. And yeah, I did that so many times it's not even funny. Like it's an absurd amount of YouTube channels I've made over the years. So, but outside of like these like stupid like Windows Movie Maker slideshows I would make every now and then, and some like occasional like low quality shit I would film like on my friend's flip phone or something, which was one of the videos I mentioned earlier. I never made like any serious attempt at YouTube really back then. It was a lot of that stuff, like just the low effort shit, because I either didn't have the drive to learn how to do it, or I was just, stupid kid. Like I wanted to make videos, but the process of actually learning how to do so as a kid just doesn't really register to you. That doesn't mean I stopped being active on this on YouTube. In fact, I was consistently using it still, and if not even using it even more as time went on, but it was just solely as a viewer and consuming content, nothing I was putting out there. I went through all these phases where I wasn't making anything, even though I was making all these new channels, but I could tell deep down I still had this really strong urge to make something and like put something out there into the world on YouTube that I actually was proud of, something I wanted to make. You know, I wanted to contribute to this big medium that everyone was now putting themselves out there on. I think that's why I would make those occasional kind of low quality videos, because it was still something to me, at least, you know, it was still something out there, even if it wasn't very high quality or had too much effort in it. And I was just too ignorant or scared to actually put in that effort back then. Video games have been a major part of my life since I was around 7 years old, and that hobby only started to grab me and pull me in more and more as I aged into like a young teen. And so naturally at some point I would discover the more like gaming side of YouTube, and my attention as far as content creation would go in that direction as well. I mentioned video games because, and this is another thing that a lot of people my age can probably relate to, one of my biggest interests around this time when I was a young teenager was specifically the Call of Duty games. Like I said, a lot of people can probably relate to that, especially if you're a dude. I missed a lot of things growing up in my life, a lot of, you know, important or big things that people go through that I did not get to experience. But I know that this is going to sound cringe to someone who doesn't play video games, but if you play these games, you're going to know exactly what I mean. I am lucky that I can say I did not miss what was basically the golden age of the Call of Duty games. I'm talking like, I guess roughly Call of Duty 4 to like Black Ops 2, but specifically the run of like Black Ops 1 to Modern Warfare 3 to Black Ops 2. I got to experience all three of those games back to back for 3 years straight. Those are like, you know, looked as some of the best Call of Duty games ever. Those are like the best Call of Duty games in my opinion. So I definitely look back on that time fondly. And although they're just video games, and anyone who doesn't play video games might be weirded out at the fact that someone would say one of their best times of their life was playing a certain video game. But like I mentioned, if you played these games and you were there for those times, you know what I'm talking about, and you know that really it was more than just a game. You know, it's about the community there and the excitement of all this new stuff and talking to people on Xbox Live, stuff like that. That's why I say I'm not necessarily ashamed of that, I guess. But when that became my new obsession, I started discovering YouTube channels like Blame Truth and his commentary videos, some other kind of commentary YouTubers as well. I would start watching Machinima and a lot of the people who were associated with Machinima, like X Jaws. I used to watch like T Martin, Ali A, like back in the day, like older Ali A before he was a Fortnite YouTuber. I remember one day, I believe it was the channel Machinima Respawn, they had posted a Black Ops 1 montage by a guy named Optic Predator. Anyone who knows what I'm talking about is probably also nodding their heads. They know who I'm talking about. If you knew, you knew. When I first saw this montage, it like blew me away as a teenager. Black Ops 1 had just recently came out, and I was already like super into it. Probably my favorite Call of Duty of all time, by the way. So seeing my favorite game in this, and I was getting exposed to this content, really like wowed me. It just completely like shocked me. It wasn't until that video, that Optic Predator montage, that I first became exposed to like an even more niche and smaller community within Call of Duty, which was the sniping and the trick-shotting community. Once I was introduced to that little pocket of like the Call of Duty and YouTube world, I became like fully engulfed. I found a bunch of sniping clans, like the OG FaZe clan stuff, Dare, Optic, like I mentioned, Darth. There used to be YouTube series like Clash of the Clans, not the mobile game. It was a different thing. And then another channel called A Clan War. These are two channels that basically like two clans would make montages and compete against each other, and the community would basically vote on which was the best one, and then they would move on and then face off against another clan. It was really fucking cool. I swear to God, I don't remember how long that lasted for, or if anyone like a lot of people remember that, because I haven't seen those kind of channels in so long. It seems like I don't know too many people that remember the Clash of Clans or Clan War stuff, but I'm sure there's someone that does. I started learning how to quickscope after that, obviously. I started doing, like, really shitty, like, ground 360 trick shots, like, nothing cool, like, just the normal shit people start off with. Gradually started learning more and more as I went on. I started meeting a lot of people on Xbox Live who were doing the exact same thing. A lot of cool people. Some people are kind of cringe, but I met just a wide array of people that were all doing this exact same thing that I wanted to do. You know, as I got more into that, my desire with YouTube turned into wanting to make my own clan, just like FaZe, Optic, Dare, Soar, etc., and make my own montages and have our own team tages, stuff like that. That was basically what my YouTube desires pivoted to after that, and I couldn't get enough of it. I must have started like or joined at least like 10 or more different clans throughout that era. Changed my gamer tag so many times. You know, all the Microsoft points I spent changing my gamer tag. All those hours of like 6-man parties on Search and Destroy, you know, going for shots. All the time we spent in private matches, practicing shots while we just talked about stupid shit. It was a fun time. You felt like you were part of something. Like you're part of this community that maybe not everyone understood it, but you had these people that did, and you could always hang out with them and watch cool shots, go for cool shots, you know, congratulate your friends when they hit stuff, you know, show them how to do new tricks, stuff like that. Honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, it kind of was like, I guess, a virtual version of like the skateboarding or like BMXing community. You know, all those people, they go out there and they teach each other tricks. They're all hanging out based around this one interest and etc. Obviously, you're actually doing a physical activity with skateboarding or BMX, but on, you know, this is like the video game equivalent of that, learning all these tricks and trying to get better at it. Trick shotting, let's be clear, trick shotting, like hitting a shot was mostly just luck. Like you couldn't really do too much to control where the shot was going. Like, skill came into the tricks you were doing before you hit the shot, which some people could be genuinely very good at that. And I ended up becoming a pretty good shot with a sniper rifle on Call of Duty by the end of all of that, but admittedly, I was never more than just a decent trick shotter. Some of my friends were definitely way better at it than I was. But just like the AT and JH days that I mentioned, I was still a poor kid growing up in the South. In order to record any of your gameplay to make these montages and videos and stuff like that, over the years, there was a couple different devices you would need to be able to record it. At first, it was like the Dazzle Easy Capture or whatever the fuck it was called. Then there was the HD PVR, and then eventually an Elgato. Now, I'm probably losing a lot of people here talking about this. It probably sounds like gibberish now, but if you're into the community or you were back then, all this stuff's probably either you already know this or it might be coming back to you. I still cannot afford any of these things, and I never actually got any of them until I finally got an Elgato, like way after I had already quit trick shotting. And it's just funny, I remember how badly I wanted these things, one of these devices back then, but I feel like I probably knew deep down I was never going to get one. I used to put getting HD PVR soon in like my Xbox or my YouTube channel bios. Kind of sad that I did that because I was not getting one soon at all. Although I never got a recording device until way after the fact, and I never made like a successful clan. There is actually a deeper part of this story where I did actually see some success in this community. But that's something I probably want to save for another video. I'm already probably talking about this too much for people who don't know what I'm talking about. Just know that the story doesn't end necessarily there. There's something I'll probably make a video about one day when it goes to the trick shotting stuff. But just like the 18JH days, the sniping trick shotting community era was very nostalgic. It's a very nostalgic time in my life, but it didn't last forever. Neither one lasted forever. I still play video games to this day, but as the years went on, Call of Duty games started to diminish in quality, and the community around trick shotting and stuff like that only begun to shrink and kind of become more and more niche and honestly irrelevant after that. Most of the clans I mentioned earlier either don't exist anymore or they've shifted into an almost unrecognizable state compared to how they used to be. I mean, if you look at FaZe Clan now compared to what they're doing, you'll know what I mean. I do know a handful of people are still out there, you know, going for shots, and they're trying to make it as a trick shotter or a kill feeder. They're still trying to grind out a YouTube channel or a clan, stuff like that. I wish good luck to any of you guys that are out there still grinding. You guys are pretty much the only ones keeping that shit alive. And it is cool to see, though, that there's still like a little spark left. There's still people that are passionate about it. For me personally, though, I mean, I was only going to maintain interest in it for so long before my inability to really meaningfully contribute to that community actually went anywhere. I just started to get more bummed out than anything that I couldn't do anything with it. So, and then like I said, Call of Duty as a franchise changed a lot, moved on to other games, you know, that's kind of what happens when you get older. I'm going to provide one more example of my history on YouTube because this is where I'm going to start trying to wrap together what I'm talking about here and basically kind of get more into why this video is being made in the first place. So, after my sniping era that I just mentioned, more time would pass. I continued to use this platform, you know, as I became an adult, got into my 20s, and, you know, as usual, I continued to kind of pivot from like one interest to another and discover new types of videos and new creators as I got older and found more kind of stuff. Apart from video games, one of my other passions and probably my biggest passion overall is music, whether that be, you know, listening to music, you know, your favorite bands, your favorite artists, finding new songs, finding new genres to get lost in, you know, learning the history of different genres and bands. And then, you know, on the creative end with like learning how to make music, the art around writing music and composing music. Music has just always been extremely important to me. I started to understand the concept of what a band was at a pretty young age. Linkin Park was actually the first band I ever got into when I was a kid. Around like 7 years old, I had a Hybrid Theory and Meteora on CD, and that kind of started my journey as being a music fan. I started to understand the concept of what a band was at a pretty young age, and I started kind of diving into more and more music as I started to, you know, get more immersed in the realm of music. Linkin Park kind of, you know, snowballed into finding more new metal, you know, Korn, Slipknot, that, you know, everything in that realm, Deftones, you know, I could list so many bands. That was a place I started to really get into as I got older. It was music. I actually, when I was in second grade, I learned how to sing and dance to this really dumb Aaron Carter song that was in the Jimmy Neutron movie. And I actually performed that at my talent show at school in the second grade. It's recorded on some VHS somewhere that I think my mom still has, but I'm not even sure if the tape is still good anymore. I haven't watched it in years. It could have been taped over or something. But yeah, I did that in second grade. So that just kind of shows my love for music was pretty young. I actually, too, once I got to middle school, I learned how to play the clarinet. And I played that all the way through high school as well. I know there's going to be a Squidward joke there. I've heard them before, trust me. I didn't choose to play the clarinet. I joined band in sixth grade, and they basically made us like try every instrument in a row. Like I tried the clarinet, flute, trumpet, etc. And I guess the instructor kind of just decided which one they thought we would have the most potential with. I got stuck with the clarinet, and I fucking hated it when I was a kid. I could not stand playing the clarinet. I was this like wannabe edgy kid like who listened to Slipknot, and I love new metal and fucking Shadow the Hedgehog, shit like that. The idea of playing the clarinet probably was nothing less fun than doing that. Despite that, I ended up actually becoming decent at it. I made it all the way up to advanced band in high school, but I at some point stopped taking out my instrument altogether. I just stopped participating in class at all, other than like the mandatory tests that I had to do, which I would actually do pretty good at. My instructors would always like kind of lecture me and tell me they were really sad that I wouldn't want to play it when I was very obviously, you know, decent at it. And I just did not care back then. I was not interested at all. I wish I would have listened to them back then, because I still to this day actually know how to read sheet music pretty decently. And I've recently, over the last year or so, started to learn how to like produce music, like using FL Studio and making beats and stuff like that. And I do feel like some of what I learned back in the day when I played clarinet, because I had to learn how to read music, I had to learn, you know, the like science behind music, and I played concerts like at my school. So I think some of that from back then must have like somewhat translated to what I'm doing now, because I think I've been getting the hang of the music production stuff rather quickly. Like obviously I'm not great at it yet. I've only made like 7 songs, but I don't know. I feel like I kind of have somewhat of an ear for it already. Like I kind of can pick out like rhythms and patterns and like timings for songs. I mean, that also just comes with the thousands of hours I've spent listening to music over and over again as, you know, as the years go on. But I do think me knowing how to play an instrument, or at least playing an instrument when I was a kid, probably helped a little bit. I had 0 interest in the clarinet, like I mentioned, but I think if I would have just kept at it as a teenager, that might have translated a little bit better to what I'm doing now. I could have even utilized that skill and apply them to, you know, what I do now. But I dropped the clarinet after freshman year. So I played it from the age of like, I want to say 12 to 15. So about like 3 years I played the clarinet. And like I mentioned, that was a lot of starting to not participate at the end and just doing the tests. Just like with the COD the Call of Duty sniping thing I mentioned, when it came to music, as I kind of got more into the realm of music, I started to settle into my own niche and as far as music goes as well. And you know, if it's not really surprising that I mentioned the first bands I got into were the new metal stuff like Slipknot, Korn, Linkin Park, Deftones, Limp Bizkit, stuff like that. That kind of snowballed into getting into the heavier side of music as I got older, you know, more into like heavier metal genres, punk, hardcore music. I got into emo music, stuff like that. My music journey kind of just progressed into the heavier direction as I got older. So I would, you know, gradually discover and grow to love multiple genres. At first, I was kind of narrow-minded and only listening to heavy music. Like, I used to be that fucking edgy kid that thought metal was the only genre that was good, everything else sucked. And then I got even more niche with like clean vocals in metal entirely just suck, and it has to be just screaming and the heaviest shit possible, like the whole song. But eventually I stopped being an idiot and started to appreciate music a little bit more, you know, as an actual art form, and not being so narrow-minded and close-minded on what I listened to. And then at that point, I started to eventually be exposed to the music side of YouTube, just like I did with the gaming side of it. You know, heavy music content was always pretty niche on YouTube. It still is to a degree today. But back around like 2012 to like 2014, when I'm talking about like when I was doing this, when I was really getting into it, there wasn't too much to choose from as far as like YouTubers that were making videos on metal and punk, stuff like that. I used to watch channels like Cover Killer Nation, if anyone remembers him, Mount Blaggerith as well. Probably not super well known, probably only a couple people maybe know who those people were, but Cover Killer Nation, I think, quit YouTube a few years ago. But when I remembered these guys for this video, I did end up looking up Count Blaggerith, and I surprisingly found out he still makes videos to this day, which I think is pretty cool. I don't know too much about either of those guys, and I haven't really watched them in years, but they were kind of what kickstarted my love for like music on YouTube, like the reviewing and the discussion about music kind of stuff. You know, after that, I got into, pretty sure everyone's going to know who I'm about to say, who I got into next. You know, I'm mentioning music and reviewing music. You probably already know who I'm about to say. You know, Mr. Anthony Fantano himself. Anthony Fantano reviews heavy music somewhat often, but honestly, my taste and his don't actually line up that much at all. In fact, a lot of the stuff I like, he either just vehemently hates, or, you know, it's not really his thing, you know, like nu metal and deathcore, stuff like that. But that never really bothered me. Like, even back then, when that was like all I listened to, his opinions on music, even if he hated what I liked, never really, you know, got to me or made me stop watching him. I don't know why people are like that, because it is just this one dude's opinion at the end of the day. Like, he's not, you know, grand master of music. Like, he doesn't decide what's good and bad. It's you can decide if it's good or bad. But he did end up getting me exposed to, like, you know, some decent music even outside of like the heavy music realm. I have found a decent amount of good stuff from him over the years. You know, and like I said, although I don't watch a lot of his heavy music reviews because he doesn't review a lot of music that I personally listen to, I've always really liked his style of content and like the way he does his reviews and how knowledgeable he is about music. So that appealed to me as a huge music nerd myself. I started to want to do something kind of similar to Anthony Fantano's kind of style of content at some point, like, you know, music reviews, discussions, but more so like in the specific realms of the music that I liked. You know, like making kind of serious discussions and reviews, but in the realm of music I liked, you know, more like nu metal and metalcore, deathcore, and then eventually as I got into the other genres of metal and stuff like that. I know there ended up being fucking, you know, punk rock MBA Finn McKenty, if anyone knows who that guy is, that did basically that. And I'm sure if you're into this at all, you already know what happened with him fairly recently. Funny to mention him because I actually used to really like his channel. He was basically doing what I wanted to do, where it was like these more discussion and history-based type videos, deep diving into bands, but more in like the nu metal and stuff like that. And I used to actually be in his Discord server. I've talked to him probably 2 or 3 different times. I was in his Discord for a while. I would join his streams whenever he was streaming because he would tell us when they were going up early in Discord, stuff like that. So I liked him for a very long time, but I ended up kind of starting to be a little sketched out by him as time went on. Some stuff doesn't really matter for this video, but I stopped watching him before he kind of came out as being just, you know, fucking fake and all this, but I figured it was coming at some point. So, you know, him being gone left that just a void of like channels that are talking about that kind of music on a bigger level. I'm sure there's YouTubers out there, like good ones that I don't know about, maybe that are smaller, that do make videos about more genres I'm looking into. I can't remember off the top of my head. Depending on when you're watching this video, if you do check my uploads on this channel, you will see a few years ago I did post a couple of music related videos. There's 2 track reviews, I believe, that are on my channel from back then, and then just a couple CD collection videos that I made. Those are just another attempt to start making YouTube videos. If you couldn't tell from the gap in time between those videos and this one, was another short-lived attempt, just like all the other ones I've mentioned so far. I remember, you know, back then, those music reviews, the 2 ones that I did, how many months of like mental contemplation and anxiety I had, just, you know, getting to a point where like, man, I haven't done YouTube this whole time and I just want to finally do it. And I'm trying to work up the confidence to make those videos. And I remember something convinced me to like, all right, just press the record button and record those videos. I did those 2 reviews, and then, you know, those unedited like CD collection iPhone videos, and I ended up giving up again. I don't know if you're noticing a pattern here with the examples that I provided, you know, the 18JH and then the sniping stuff and then the music stuff. Multiple times over the years have I found some sort of interest on YouTube that I really, really wanted to turn into making my own videos, and I would make some half-assed attempt at it, and then I would let pressure, anxiety, stuff like that get to me, and I would just give up. Happened every single time I tried. This is where the video is probably going to take a little bit of a more deep and I guess slightly depressing turn. But this is kind of exactly why I'm making this video. This is where we're going to get into like the meat and potatoes of why I explained all this backstory and where we're getting to with this. So anyone who's still listening at this point, if you haven't tuned out, I appreciate you listening to my dumbass ramblings. So I have loved art my entire life, whether that be music, video games, anime, movies, you know, video creation, all things that I would consider art. In my entire life, I always felt this very deep but like strong urge to participate in this big, wonderful world of art that, you know, human beings are able to make. I wanted to, you know, contribute in my own way in one of these mediums or multiple of these mediums, but I could just never bring myself to do it. If I ever did find that spark, it lasted for a very short time before something snuffed it out. You know, whether that was snuffed out by my own laziness, my own lack of motivation, fear of being criticized from other people, you know, fear of being judged, shit that was going on in my like unstable home life and my unstable mental health, my lack of skills and, you know, creating videos, and idea of being rejected or clowned by my friends, family, stuff like that. All these things, just these mental barriers just kept putting me down every time I tried to get up here and make something, you know. I remember when I was a child, and I was at a point in my life when anime and manga were of major interest of mine, especially Naruto, like I mentioned earlier. I'm sure I felt the same way that a lot of American or, you know, just Western kids felt growing up when you were first exposed to anime for the first time, you know, like Toonami, for example. Anime was like so new and so different compared to what you were seeing on American television back then. You know, there's these crazy characters, these fight scenes, stories that spanned across multiple arcs and episodes. It wasn't just like a one and done thing every episode like most cartoons in America are. And I just fell in love with it. And that snowballed eventually into me developing what I would recall as like my first real dream job or like career idea I wanted to do when I got older. It was the first time I ever thought about doing something when I was a grown up, and that was basically making my own manga, creating my own anime. I wanted to create my own characters, my own story, you know, my own lore, inspire people and immerse people in this epic fantasy world, you know, the same way that series like Naruto did for me and so many other kids out there. And I was very passionate about this idea for being like a 13-year-old kid at the time. By the way, this was before the trick-shotting stuff and the music stuff. So this was kind of after the AT&JH stuff, but before the Call of Duty stuff. So I know it's a little out of order, but yeah, I'm not the most organized person. I remember when I was 13 years old, I would get a notebook and I would start to come up with all these characters in my head, imagine how their outfits looked, what hairstyles they had, and what their backstories would be. And I would sit down with this notebook and I would literally draw every single one of them, write like little lore profiles on all of them. And I did this for so many different characters that I came up with. I wasn't great at drawing by any means, but you know, I was a kid. I didn't really care at the time. I would come up with, you know, I decided on a series name back then, like what I would call my manga. Came up with these very long and intricate plot lines and character arcs that would expand over like multiple years and stuff like that. And I will be honest, a lot of it was pretty much heavily inspired or like just a clone of Naruto or like Avatar: Last Airbender. A lot of stuff I watched back when I was a kid, and I think most kids probably do that when they come up with stuff. There was somewhat of its own identity there. There was definitely like my touch, like, you know, unique kind of perspective on it being applied there to a degree, and I was consistent at it for a very long time. I had developed these plot and these characters for at least 2 to 3 years. I was serious about it for like from the age of 13 to 15. My little brother and I, we had a toy bucket when we were kids that was absolutely filled with wrestling action figures because we loved WWE and stuff like that growing up. So I would use them for my story, essentially. I would like take them out and assign each one of the figures to characters in my story. I remember like the main character of my story I assigned to the Bob Orton figure we had, which is Randy Orton's dad. I only did that because like his hands I thought were cool position for my character. Stuff like that is how I base my figures on characters. I had a action figure of Paul London, and I chose him as my character just because I thought his hair was the coolest of every action figure I had. And then I would take like Arcane and Undertaker figures we had, and like I turned those into like evil twin brothers in my story, stuff like that. And I would act out like entire fight scenes and plot lines with these action figures, and the toys themselves would like influence the story, like I mentioned. I remember one year I got this Ben 10 toy for one of my birthdays around that time, and I was never really a big Ben 10 fan back then, but I ended up getting like a Swamp Fire figure or something like that, and I didn't know too much about Ben 10, so I pretty much just used that action figure and incorporated him into my story. Like I ended up making like a fusion character that's like a fire and like swamp forest kind of like hybrid, just because his character was called Swamp Fire. So like that's kind of how I was implying and toys were influencing my story. Now the reason I'm going on this little tangent here is that you think about, you know, reminiscing on all this like creativity you had when you were a child and how it just seems like it just slowly vanishes when you get older. You know what I mean? Like the world was so huge and wondrous, and you had all these ideas, and like you weren't bound by any sort of mental barriers or anything. You would just do shit. You would just create stuff off the top of your head. You would, you know, pretend, act out stuff. Your creativity was pretty much boundless when you were a kid. Things like, you know, most kids would do, like playing with action figures, playing with dolls, whatever toys you had, and you just made do with whatever toys you had, and your imagination would basically be the premise of entertaining you for hours based on these action figures or whatever you had. And I think it's kind of sad to think about when you get older, that little creative, you know, free mind you have just seems to like slowly be snuffed out by the responsibilities and stresses of work, you know, bills, relationships, all this shit that just wasn't that important to you when you were a kid. Stuff you didn't have to worry about when you were a kid. And that part of you as a kid that was free and expressive, it like just gets locked up in a cage, you know, and forgotten about by all this fucking noise and frustration of adult life. At some point, you put those toys back in that toy bucket, or you put those dolls back in their dollhouse, and you just never pick them up again. You know, you rode that bike or skateboard for the last time and just you never even thought about it. That was the last time you were doing that. And I think a lot of us, myself included, as we get older, we just fell into this trap of consumerist behavior, you know, buying shit to fill that void that only started to grow as you got older and older. You know, the void that wasn't there before because you had this creative and free spirit that just is not there anymore, and there's nothing to replace that as you get older. Unless you stay creative and, you know, you stay about those kind of things that inspire you. That creative mind you had as a child just becomes replaced with being sedated. We lose the ability to contribute to anything in any meaningful way. We stop bringing new ideas to the table as far as like being creative and coming up with stuff from your head, and you just start to consume and blindly consume and over again, trying to distract yourself or, you know, sedate yourself from all the anxieties and problems that just keep piling up as you get older. At least that's, I know maybe I'm exaggerating or maybe no one knows what I'm talking about, but at least that's kind of how I started to feel as I got older, and that creative energy just got replaced with work 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, just coming home from work exhausted. You know what I mean? Like it gets replaced. That creative spark just vanishes. Even if you wanted to create something, even if you do have that creative spark still as an adult, with all this other shit going on, all these other things you have to worry about, like your job, you just have no fucking energy to even do those things after you get off. Or you develop a nicotine or caffeine or other drug addiction because it's the only fucking thing keeping you stable. It's the only thing that can take your mind off all that garbage from your job, your, you know, stresses and family, all that kind of shit. You'll doom scroll for hours on on TikTok or through one of the numerous, shorts algorithms for 2 hours straight, just getting these quick little dopamine fixes when you see like a little cool edit or a funny meme or some nostalgic shit that reminds you of those times in 2005 when life was actually still fun and you had that creative spark. You might see some self-help video that gives you 5 cool tricks to get off your phone and feel better, but it goes in one ear and out the other as that next shit post or meme comes up in your feed and all that advice is just completely gone. Or you put on some bullshit in the background on Netflix that you only look up at twice because you can't even be in silence with your own thoughts for 15 seconds anymore. Or you rewatch the same show 6 times, stuff your face with DoorDash, fill your lungs with a vape or with a weed, always staring at your phone screen, a computer screen, a TV screen, buying shit off Wish, Temu, Amazon that is shit quality and that you might wear once before it collects dust in your closet because you got that 5 seconds of pleasure just clicking that checkout button and waiting for it to arrive. You see what I'm saying? It's just becomes a cycle of buy, consume, sedation, distraction. That's what your life becomes for a lot of us when you get older, and that ability to be creative is replaced by those things. I think you get the point, but I mean, I'm saying this because I've been the same way. Constantly being fed content, ads, distractions, taking in a bunch of shit, consuming a bunch of shit, but not actually adding anything to that ethos yourself. That's exactly what I was mentioning with the stories I was telling you about my backstory with YouTube. Is that's so many years that I just wanted to be creative. I wanted to put something out there, but instead I was exactly how I described. I was sedated, distracted by all these things that don't fucking matter, letting all these things get to me mentally that would prevent me from just putting something out there, even if it's not great. I got fucking tired of it at some point. Having a huge passion of music, but only ever consuming music and never attempting to make my own. Watching all these videos and all these topics that I'm passionate about and want to talk about myself, but just staying passive and silent and just listening to another random person's take on the internet and ingesting that instead of putting my own take out there. And I think human beings, I think we crave expression. We crave to be heard, and whether we want to admit it or not, it's why we dress the way we dress. We style our hair the way we do. We present ourselves in certain ways. We have identities that we are dying to learn and how to express ourselves and understand ourselves and become a fully realized individual. And we only have one chance to do that. But if you just work all week, come home and spend your free time just absorbing and consuming all this content and information that isn't going anywhere, it's not being used in any way after you consume it, is that really the life you want to live? Like, I know there's simple people out there that, and I don't say simple in like a derogatory way, but I know there's simple people out there that are content with the simple things. They're fine coming home from work and just relaxing with a movie or a book, playing a video game for a few hours, and there's nothing wrong with some R&R every once in a while. But for me, it's just that's not the only type of dynamic and relationship I want to have with my life, is a passive and consumerist one. Especially with art. Art is this unfathomably large monolith of human culture, human achievement and advancement, human expression, all these things that we're capable of as a species. But some people just want to spend 40 hours a week, ripping your Breeze bar and watching fast food content until you die. And I personally spent way too fucking long being a consumer and just ingesting, taking in shit, and not doing the opposite, putting something out there. Those are decades of my life that I will never get back. Decades I could have spent developing a skill that I'm going to utilize for the rest of my life, meeting new people and experiencing new things. But instead, I have 400 hours on some fucking FPS game that's not going to be relevant in 6 months. You know what I mean? I've scarfed down junk food that is fucking killing me slowly, ingesting thousands of hours of content that's going to be nothing more than like a little blip in my mind 5 hours after I watch it, if I even remember watching it 5 hours after. Our time on this planet is very limited, and I feel like if I reach my 30s, my 40s, I'm 28 years old, I feel like if I reach my 30s and 40s still doing the same shit that I've been doing all these years, I just feel like I will never be able to forgive myself. At some point, I got older, the realization started to set in for me that some pasty ginger white kid from Kentucky was never going to be a famous manga author, or at least that's how I looked at it back then. That was one of the things that mentally started to get to me, like I mentioned. And I know with the advancement of the internet, with web comics and all these cool new mediums that we have today, it is pretty possible to make that dream a reality. But when I was a kid, it just wasn't really an option, or at least I didn't know it was an option. And now it's been at least a decade since the last time I drew anything with a pencil. I had all this potential with the instrument I used to play. I could have started making music fucking 15 years ago, or learned how to play another instrument by now. But my overwhelming love and passion for music has never gone beyond consuming it, or being able to tell you about 5,000 different bands and albums that somebody else made. It's cool being able to know that stuff and talk about that stuff. But I feel like if I really love a form of art, I am just doing myself a disservice this by not contributing to it. I think that's one of the biggest reasons why this video is going to come out. Why I pressed the record button and finally got up here and I started talking about all this stuff. I'm unfortunately someone who my life has not been very easy. I don't want to trauma dump too much. That's not the intention of this video, but I feel like it's an important thing I want to establish about who I am and how my life has been, because it's going to play heavily into where this channel is going to be going and how I'm going to present myself going forward, I guess. And there's a few more things I just want to get off my chest before I sign off of here. Again, if anyone's still listening this far, I really appreciate you for sticking around and listening to what I have to say. I hopefully can promise you that this video won't be another hour long, however long this video is now, but I hope this long-winded point I'm making resonates to at least one person who ends up listening. So I was born with a very rare disease that is not curable and is something that I'm going to deal with for the rest of my life. The exact details of what that is and how it affects me is something that's probably deserving of its own video because it's important to my lore, I guess, quote unquote. But for now, I'm just going to kind of tell you what the condition is. So if you don't want to wait for whatever reason, you can have a reference point. So I suffer from a condition called osteogenesis imperfecta. Most people know it as a brittle bone disease in English. It's something I was born with and something that has provided numerous challenges for me in my life growing up. I've already been, navigating life as a disabled person since the day I was born. On top of that, my childhood was, for lack of a better term, extremely tragic, I guess the best way to put it. And again, I'm not trying to trauma dump or play in for sympathy here. I feel like this is important to who I am as a person and my background, I guess. I grew up in a broken home with constant fighting and abuse, whether that was physically, mentally, emotionally, both done to me, and I've witnessed it being done to other people in my family. And my family was very dysfunctional, very toxic. We moved a lot. Outside of the first and second grade, I literally went to a new school every single year that I was in school. That's not an exaggeration. I went to a new school every single year that I was in school. Besides first and second grade, I spent at the same school. That, mixed with just many, many other things that happened to me as a kid that I don't need to get into right now, led to me eventually being diagnosed with complex PTSD and also generalized anxiety disorder at the age of around 22 or 23. Now, I had never seen a single therapist or psychiatrist until I was already past the age of 21. And like I mentioned, my childhood was not good in most stretches of the imagination. So that's an extremely long time for someone to go through these horrific and repeated events as a child and never be able to talk to anyone or get any help whatsoever. I only finally saw a doctor back then and finally got a diagnosis with anything because I at some point had gotten so mentally unwell that I had reached a boiling point where I could tell that I was not okay anymore and I needed to seriously talk to somebody before, it was too late. Luckily, I got some help at some point, but I was definitely going down a very bad route at some point. To make matters even worse, I am pretty much convinced that I've been living as an undiagnosed autistic person for my entire life. It's something I had talked to about my therapist in the past, and it's something that it's a major issue for me that I'll probably maybe talk about in a video more at length one day because it's not too important right now. I just wanted to put that out there. Again, I feel like it does play into how I'm going to compose myself and how I'm going to speak and the perspective I have going into the other videos that I make. Needless to say, mentally I'm a little bit off, maybe a little bit worse for wear than most people, but I have no shame in admitting that, and that's by no means to say that I have had it the worst. Like, obviously I know people have had it way worse than I do. I've never just felt like a normal human being living among other human beings. I was always the shy, quiet, introverted kid growing up that kept to myself. I never spoke up. I never got in any trouble. Just always kind of kept to myself. And I always felt like I saw a lot of things differently than the people around me. And I didn't feel or act like a lot of the same ways that people around me were acting or behaving and how they kind of looked at the world. And I'm not trying to say that I'm special or unique or anything like that. In fact, I've always felt pretty negatively about myself. I have been, dying for years to just be a normal fucking person and act like everyone I know does and just fit in with everybody else, but I can't do it. I'm not like that. And again, I'm not trying to make myself sound superior or that I'm better or smarter than anybody else, because I think the opposite, like I just mentioned. I've never really put myself out into the world, at least not the real version of myself that I would say. I feel like I'm buried behind so many masks and layers of just mental barriers that I developed over the years as a defense mechanism from all these decades of trauma and social difficulties that I grew up with, and none of those needs being met for a very long time. I kind of just suppressed and kind of locked up my individuality and who I was. And I kind of just, obviously I'm not I'm not saying that I've never been myself around anyone. Like, as I've gotten older, it's gotten better to be myself around people, but there's always a degree of difficulty with that. And there's still to this day a lot of stuff that I just do not talk about with even my closest friends or my family, stuff like that. I don't know. It's just, I've never really admitted any of these things to anyone. I feel like the life I've lived for like at least the last 10 or so years has been some like bastardized and highly edited version of who really exists underneath this mask that I wear all the time. I think there's a lot of people that think they know who I am or have an idea of it, and they're not necessarily completely wrong. Like I said, I'm not somebody who like morphs my entire personality around who I'm with. There is a, like, I do express it to an extent. It's just very, I guess, diluted is the word I would use. I think a lot of people are just honestly dead wrong on who they think I am or their impression of who I am, and that's partly my fault. I am pretty horrible at expressing myself in an accurate way, and I do tend to morph or kind of, I do mask how I want to say something or how I act so that people will not realize that I'm fucking weird or that I'm off a little bit. I think that's a major reason why I've been always scared to put myself out there, and I always ended up giving up on any attempts that I made, or because of all these reasons that I'm listing here. A lot of mental barriers, a lot of mental illness. I think I socially struggle way more than most people realize in my life, even some of my closest friends. I'm not very good at talking, despite the fact that I'm on the mic here doing this, whether it be to talking to another person or even about my own emotions, my own thoughts. I keep a lot of it locked away in my head where it kind of just simmers and eats at me, and then I just kind of keep the mask up all the time. When I do make attempts to express myself and communicate and be genuine, it's usually always a mess of stuttering, not really knowing how to fully get what I'm trying to say across properly, maybe contradictions or just a lack of cohesion in what I'm saying. Even in this video, I would not be able to do what I'm doing right now if I didn't sit down and write a very long document and kind of lay out what I was going to say before I even clicked record. If I didn't do that, this would be way, way more rambly and all over the place than it already is. I became more and more socially isolated as I got older because of numerous different things. And my entire social life and personality, for the most part, started to exist like solely in the online realm. That was at my will to basically bend and chisel into whatever I thought was the most likable and presentable version of myself to others. And that shit's just not good for your brain at all. I learned very quickly that it was much easier to formulate and articulate my thoughts and emotions when I was safe behind a screen and could type and edit my words in front of me before saying them. And I started to rely on that very, very heavily, while my social skills in person, where it really mattered, stayed pretty stagnant and a little rough around the edges. It's kind of like in my head, everything makes perfect sense. Like, I know exactly who I am and how I feel on most things, but so much of it becomes lost in translation when my complete lack of social communication skills, or these decent ones, they kind of kick in, and then my brain and my mouth become completely out of sync. Like, it doesn't seem like what I'm thinking in my head can come out of my mouth in the same coherent way. When I present myself online in a text-based format or like on a social media page, it can be much more controlled and worked on as far as how I communicate versus struggling to do the same thing in real life. And that's not necessarily a good thing either, because you're not the same person you are on the internet. Let's be real. At least most people are not. Having the ability to control and filter out how you say things, what you say, how you act, your body language, etc. It can be a tool to help people, like I just mentioned, but also it's not real life at the end of the day. I think that's another reason why so many people might see me way differently than I see myself, because there are so many social skills and different things that have just never come to me naturally. I just learned how to reciprocate very well from just observing other people and, these learned behaviors to navigate social settings that would otherwise just terrify me to be in. All these difficulties and struggles that I continue to deal with to this day, I feel like they've left me pretty much unable to really express my genuine self without severe difficulties, so I just kind of hardly ever do so. And I don't mean like posting on social media, like posting some long rambly post or posting all the time or posting frequently on social media. That is not real expression. It's much easier to fine tune what you're saying, and I don't feel like that's the same thing as actually expressing yourself. You're typing into a piece of hardware, you know what I mean? And I mean expressing like my genuine, unfiltered thoughts, my own emotions and opinions with my own voice and with my face, not a profile picture, not a font. I think there's this extremely fortified barrier that I've had up for the better part of 20 years now, and at this point, I just feel like I cannot bring myself to wait any longer to start tearing this fucking barrier, finally just tear this shit down, because I'm at a point in my life where I cannot picture myself 10 years from now still being unable to be my genuine self and still relying on this increasingly failing layer of defense that I've been using to get by in my life. I feel like I have to, at this point, just force the real Aaron out into the world and force myself to try and be unafraid to be the real me before it's too fucking late. And don't get me wrong, it is not easy for me to be admitting all of this on mic with my own voice. I've done multiple takes trying to get this at least somewhat passable, and I don't even know if I'm going to keep this take depending on if I, how I keep talking as I proceed. That's literally how I think about it. Something I mentioned earlier with human beings and how we want to be heard and validated. I crave that just like everyone else. I don't like admitting that, but I do crave it very badly sometimes, and I think that's because I never in my life really felt like I've ever been truly seen or heard for the most part in a lot of different regards. And that's because whether I'm terrified to speak up and I hide behind this quiet and cold mask, or because any real expression I've ever had was ended up rejected in submission or beaten out of me as a child, I think there are many people out there that have this complete wrong idea of who I actually am and what I stand for. Like I said, a lot of that's my fault. I want to change that. I want to introduce myself to the world for the first time in a genuine way and express who I genuinely am while also figuring out that along the way. I think there are a decent amount of aspects about myself that I have known for years now, but I have just, hid it, ignored it, or had no idea to how to express it properly. This is exactly why this video is being made. This is my idea of trying to start this journey to undo all these years of just mental and emotional brick walls that I've built up. I need to tear those down, and I feel like this video is at least a start to tear these down. And I've been told by a lot of people, because I've mentioned to certain people that I'm going to try and do something like this, and I've been told that there's, certain things that you should keep to yourself, leave for people to discover, keep an aura of mystery around you, and respectfully, fuck that. I don't want to do that. I understand there are things that you should keep to yourself, things only your close friends, or things you might have difficulties talking about, or might make people see you differently. Might be a few things I leave out. I'm not stupid. I know there's some things that are probably not meant for YouTube, but honestly, I don't fucking care anymore. If I've illustrated anything with this video, I've spent way too much fucking time just burying and silencing who I really am. So many years of keeping my head down at my feet, biting my tongue, doing or saying something that I don't like or disagree with just so I can fit in or just so I can avoid conflict. And I can't do it anymore. If you guys know the novel, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, that title's pretty much how I felt my whole life. I know that sounds edgy, but it's just a thing that came up in my head as a way I can, I guess, put it into words a bit more. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm not perfect, just like everyone else. I have my flaws, I have contradictions. I've been through a lot of terrible shit that's changed the way that I see certain things, the way I approach certain things, and there's certain things that I can tolerate, and there's just certain things that I just cannot tolerate. I'm also a very damaged person. I have seen things and been through things that I cannot talk about in a pretty or funny way. There are things that are uncomfortable to talk about, things that are uncomfortable to hear someone talk about, and things that might make someone disturbed or upset to hear, but I feel like I'm getting ready to start accepting the fact that I am an imperfect and I am a scarred person. I wouldn't have become who I am today without all of those things. And there may be people out there who want to keep pushing you down and burying their real feelings, you pushing yourself down and emotions for one reason or another. But I have done that for so long, so many years, that I just feel like I don't have anything to hide anymore. What happened to me has happened to me. This is how I feel, and I am who I am. I think this channel is going to be a challenge to myself to really try and stick to that and finally show everyone who Aaron really is. And I know I'm probably going to say things that might surprise people I know. I know there might be some things I say that might make someone cringe or might make someone disagree with me or change their perspective on me, or maybe they might find out I'm not necessarily who they thought I was, but that's just how it's going to have to be. I have no reason to let other people continue to restrain me from my own individuality. I'm mentally ill. I have a lot of problems, and I have no issues going into detail about things that I should probably get really upset telling people, but fuck it. What is the point to continue to bury things and fool myself and everybody else? I like to ramble. I go on tangents about specific things for hours. I'm into a lot of niche and nerdy things that I want to make overtly long video essays about that nobody might fucking care about. I want to gush about the same 10 things because I love those same 10 things. I want to create a safe space for people like myself who might feel alone or felt unheard and confused and been able to express themselves. I want to provide at least even one person the ability to realize that there's other people that feel the same way that you do. I want all of my LGBT friends and my non-binary friends to feel welcome here, because you should be. And I don't give a fuck if anyone thinks that's cringe. There are tons of people who are marginalized and may lack a sense of community, and nobody should have to feel that way, and nobody should have to feel ashamed for being who they are. I'm a 28-year-old kid and trapped in an adult body. I fucking love Sonic the Hedgehog. I love other nerdy games. I can go niche for hours on just a lot of stupid shit that doesn't matter. I love all types of music. You know, I want to talk about all these types of music. Even if there's only 4 people that even can relate or give a fuck about what I'm saying, if it's just me and those 4 people, then fuck it. We're going to chill and we're going to have a good time. I was born with a condition that I cannot live without. I will never know what it's like to live without it. And I've been through so many horrendous things that have provided me with my own unique insight and perspective on life that I want to share with other people. And I feel like I have the right to do so just like everybody else. There's all these creators and artists over the years that have done the same thing for me and made me feel seen or understood, even when I otherwise would feel completely misunderstood. These artists and these creators gave me that sense of community when I was not getting that anywhere else. I am an individual. I have thoughts and opinions, and I've, in my life, been not necessarily the greatest at expressing those things and being genuine outside of fucking Facebook posts. But, you know, like, I'm very left-wing. I care a lot about politics and equal rights. I love all kinds of art, you know, film, video games, TV, anime. I would like to make videos and essays and deep dives on all these different interests I have. And I want to learn how to, you know, edit better, film stuff, script things, you know, how to produce better music, sing better music. I want to learn how to do these things and just kind of just learn as I go, because I have made so many failed attempts at this. At this point, like, I just have to try it. There's no other option except for trying it. I made my very first YouTube channel 18 fucking years ago. Every year that goes by where those abandoned YouTube channels and videos just keep disappearing further in the void, every year I keep telling myself to stop being such a bitch and just do it. You know, just do what you want to do. I can't go another year where I sit here and I just stare at my screen and I stare at this fucking mic that I bought and I don't use them. I've seen so many people on this website recently that seem to be in a similar place to where I am, where they finally picked up the mic and just made, you know, simple videos. Like, I've seen a lot of videos where it's just kind of like gameplay in the background while they talk about stuff, kind of like this. It's just cool to see YouTube is kind of returning to its roots a little bit, and I really like that. And I know there's a sea of content out there. Like, every single one of us is fighting for your attention and have to stand out from the rest. And I honestly don't think I'm more special than anyone else, but, you know, I at least hope that I can just be myself and attract others to my videos who feel the same way that I do. I've always hated my voice. I've always hated how I look, how I act. I am a pretty low confidence, low self-esteem person, and I don't like admitting that. But these are all things that I hope to improve upon as I keep going and keep doing this. Hopefully, keep with this. And I do appreciate anyone who sticks around while you know, witnesses this random idiot on YouTube figure out who he is and watches me evolve and grow out of all these things that kept me, you know, really silent and really scared for so long. Like I said, I'm not gonna be perfect. I haven't done any of this before. I'm still scared. And I'm scared to play this back and even hear my own voice. The idea of being vulnerable, knowing anyone can hear this and see this, that scares me too. You know, I'm scared I'm not going to be good enough. I'm going to make an ass of myself, but I will only know those things if I try them. I need to attempt those things. I don't want to do any of this to get famous or get money or anything like this. I feel like this is something I need to do for myself. And I want to get to a point where I can write a great script for something that I genuinely am passionate about and be proud of it when I put it out there. I want to get good enough at producing music to achieve the sound that I always wanted to use, be able to use my own voice without being scared of using it. I plan on using this type of video format primarily to, like, just kind of help myself grow, like, you know, gameplay in the background while I just talk about something that's a current event or an opinion on something, telling a story about something I've experienced or been through, or, you know, just to chit chat and talk to whoever wants to listen to me ramble. I want to use this kind of format to help me get better at speaking, become more confident at speaking, you know, not stuttering and tripping over words as much, stuff like that. I know I have a lot of things I can talk about, and so I'm really challenging myself to try and stick to this once this gets out here and not let myself down for the 100th time. I want to learn how to make bigger video projects as well. You know, I have a couple ideas already that I've already started to work on a little bit. And last year, I finally started learning how to produce music on FL Studio, like I mentioned earlier. I have about 7 songs out right now, and you know, they're not great. Like, I'm new to it, but I am proud of myself for starting to finally do that. Even though I am lazy sometimes and I slack off and I get inconsistent, I'm proud of what I've done so far because I've finally started to do it. And this is kind of just the beginning of that. The music is starting, so I want to add this into the mix as well. And I really hope that this channel will be another step in that journey to be creative and expressing all this shit that I've been bottling up for almost 20 years now. My best friends and I have started as what I would kind of describe as like an amateur, I guess, multimedia collective. We call ourselves Drive 99. We make our own music, but it's also not just a music thing. It's kind of like a collective with different forms of art. Like we plan on spanning across music, video games, maybe even other forms of content at some point. If you guys want to check any of that stuff out, it's on my profile already, and I'll probably like put it in the description or something. Making music honestly is what I want to do more than anything else, even more than this. So I do appreciate anyone who checks out my music, or anyone in our group's music, and I promise that's only the start of the music stuff. I plan on going pretty far with that, hopefully. Like I said, I know this video's probably been very long. I have no idea how long this video is, but I feel like it's probably an hour, which is kind of crazy, but fuck it. Anyone who made it this far, again, my name is Aaron. You can call me Gloom. I'd probably prefer that. And I hope you stick around and, join me in this scary but hopeful journey that I'm about to try and embark on here. And hopefully there's some really cool shit down the line once I get going. Anyone who already knows me, or, we used to be friends, or maybe we knew each other in school or something and you heard this, nice to see you. I appreciate you for listening. If I said anything that surprised you or went against your notions of me that you had before, probably going to be a recurring theme if you stick around. I just hope that anyone can maybe learn to at least accept or try to understand me for me and listen out to what I have to say. Yeah, I think that's probably it. I know this video is probably going to be like an hour, and I doubt that many people are going to be listening an hour in, but even if this gets 2 views, I know that I put this out here, and this is just video number 1, so hopefully there's going to be more. I think that'll probably do it. I just want to say a Happy New Year's to everyone, since the year just started. If you're watching this and comes out, stay safe, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. We should all, try and strive for making 2025 the best year we can for ourselves and for everyone else around us, because hopefully this increasingly hostile economic and political state of the United States doesn't kill all of us at the end of the year. Just try your best, and if you got something that you are wanting to do and you've been scared to do it, or you've been anxious to do it, whatever reason, I hope maybe this video could help you try and do the same thing I'm doing, and just go for it. You have no one's going to make you do it except for you. No one else is going to tell you to do it. Even if you don't have a good mic, even if you don't have a good recording setup, you don't need any of that. You have to start somewhere. So I hope that anyone who's had the same idea that I've had maybe does the same thing, in the future. So other than that, I think I'm going to sign off here. You've heard me talk long enough. So I want to say have a good one, and thanks for watching. Peace.